Wars are usually fought over land, power, or freedom. But sometimes, humanity decides to go to war over a pig, a flock of birds, or by throwing politicians out of a window. Welcome to the Absolute Neural Feed. Today, we are looking at 12 of the most ridiculous, bizarre, and absolutely pointless conflicts in human history. Can a giant yellow inflatable duck almost cause a military conflict between two nuclear powers? In 2013, a giant floating art installation of a rubber duck was traveling the world. When it arrived in the waters between China and Taiwan, political tensions spiked. Chinese state media blocked images of the duck because activists used it to mock government censorship online. Meanwhile, military vessels from both sides monitored the floating toy, worried it could be used as a distraction for a surprise attack. It was a surreal moment where world armies stood ready because of a giant, yellow, inflatable rubber duck. Can a single pig eating potatoes lead to a war between the United States and the British Empire? It almost did in 1859. An American farmer on San Juan Island shot a British-owned pig that was rooting in his garden. Instead of a simple apology, both nations sent warships and hundreds of soldiers to the island, staring each other down for months. Both sides were ready to fire, but commanders eventually realized how ridiculous the situation was. They reached a peaceful agreement, meaning the only casualty of this international crisis was a single pig eating potatoes. How did a flock of noisy geese save the entire Roman Empire from a stealth attack? In 390 BC, Gallic warriors attacked Rome under the cover of darkness. They managed to sneak past the Roman guards and climb up the Capitoline Hill completely undetected. However, they marched past the Temple of Juno, where the sacred geese were kept. The birds began cackling and flapping their wings furiously, waking up the Roman defenders just in time to push back the invaders. Rome survived a total collapse because a flock of noisy geese saved the entire empire. Can a severed human ear trigger a global war between two world superpowers? In 1739, it did exactly that. A British sea captain named Robert Jenkins had his ear sliced off by Spanish coast guards who accused him of smuggling. Jenkins preserved his pickled ear in a jar and brought it all the way to the British Parliament. The politicians were so outraged by this insult to the empire that they declared war on Spain. The conflict lasted for nearly a decade and cost thousands of lives, all because of a severed human ear in a jar. In Prague, if people didn't like your politics, they didn't just vote you out, they threw you out of a window. This happened so often, it got its own name: defenestration. The most famous instance happened in 1618, when two Catholic lords were tossed out of a high window at Prague Castle. Amazingly, they survived the 50-foot fall. Catholics claimed angels caught them, while Protestants joked they simply landed in a massive pile of manure that cushioned the impact. Either way, this one fall sparked the 30 Years' War, proving that in Prague, if they don't like your politics, they'll throw you out of a window. If you're enjoying these forgotten files of history, hit the subscribe button and join the feed. It helps us dig deeper into the archives. Now, back to the madness. How many soldiers does it take to trim a tree? In 1976, the US military sent a whole army just to cut down one topol. After North Korean soldiers killed 2 Americans for trying to trim a tree in the DMZ, the US launched Operation Paul Bunyan. They didn't just send a gardener. They sent 81 soldiers, 27 helicopters, B-52 bombers, and an aircraft carrier offshore. All of this massive firepower was there for one reason: to protect the guys with the chainsaws. North Korea watched in silence as the US proved it would send a whole army just to cut down one tree. In 1355, a massive 3-day riot broke out in Oxford. that left nearly 100 people dead, all because a student complained about a bad beer. A couple of Oxford students were drinking at a local tavern when they complained that the wine and beer were low quality. The bartender got defensive, insults were traded, and a mug was thrown at his head. The argument quickly escalated into a full-scale war between the university students and the townspeople. Local citizens armed themselves with bows and arrows, storming the college buildings. It took royal intervention to stop the violence, which started because a student complained about a bad beer. The last invasion of mainland Britain was defeated by a woman with a pitchfork and a group of ladies in red cloaks. In 1797, a French force landed in Wales, but they weren't prepared for Jemima Nicholas. She reportedly captured 12 French soldiers by herself. Even better, the rest of the French army saw a group of local women wearing traditional red cloaks and tall black hats. From a distance, they mistook them for elite British redcoats and surrendered in a panic. The invasion was ruined simply because the French were terrified of women in red cloaks. Mao Zedong once ordered the destruction of every sparrow in China, accidentally causing one of the worst famines in history. In 1958, the Chinese government declared war on sparrows, claiming they ate too much grain. Millions of citizens clapped pots and pans to keep the birds from landing until they died of exhaustion. The campaign worked, but it created a massive ecological disaster. Without sparrows to eat them, locust populations exploded, devouring all the crops. The resulting famine cost the lives of an estimated 30 million people, all because Mao ordered the destruction of every sparrow in China. King Conrad III sentenced every man in the castle to death, but he was completely outsmarted by their wives. After conquering the castle, the king offered the women a deal. They could leave safely and carry whatever they could fit on their backs. He expected them to take gold or jewelry. Instead, the castle gates opened and the women emerged, carrying their husbands on their shoulders. The king was so impressed by their wit and loyalty that he kept his word and let everyone go. It's a legendary story of how the strongest weapon was whatever the women could fit on their backs. Heavy armor is supposed to protect you, but in 1242, it became a one-way ticket to the bottom of a frozen lake. During the Battle of the Ice, the Teutonic Knights faced off against Prince Alexander Nevsky of Russia. The knights were covered in massive steel plates, making them nearly invincible on land. But as the battle moved onto the frozen Lake Peipus, the ice couldn't handle the weight. The surface shattered, and the knights were dragged down by their own protection. They learned the hard way that sometimes your greatest strength is a one-way ticket to the bottom of a frozen lake. August 6th, 1915. Osowiec Fortress. The German army is about to witness something that shouldn't be possible. They released a wall of toxic chlorine gas, 30 feet high, rolling toward the Russian lines. The grass turned black. The copper buttons on uniforms turned green. Without gas masks, the Russian defenders were literally dissolving from the inside out. Expecting to find only corpses, 7,000 German soldiers marched forward to claim the fort. But as the green mist cleared, the ground began to move. Out of the trenches rose a nightmare. Roughly 100 Russian soldiers, their faces wrapped in blood-soaked rags, staggered toward the Germans. They weren't just bleeding. They were coughing up pieces of their own lungs as the gas liquefied their insides. Instead of dying quietly, they fixed bayonets and charged. The sight of these zombies screaming through blood was so terrifying that the German lines broke. In a blind panic, the Germans trampled each other to escape, caught in their own barbed wire, while the dead men kept coming. They didn't win because of numbers. They won because they were too angry to die. Human history is far weirder than we are taught. Which of these cases shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to check our playlists for more deep dives. Stay curious. Stay neural. See you in the next one.